My name is Donna, and I'm a friend of the Soshimsa Zen Center. The world through Zen eyes is brought to you by Buddhist monks trained in the art of harmonizing spirituality and well-being. If you're interested in content related to fostering self-discovery and positivity, we're asking you to consider making a small donation to assist with keeping this program going.
Welcome back to another episode of the World Through Zen Eyes podcast. I'm Jörgen Sonnen here with...
I'm Dr. Ruben Lambert.
Welcome back. Let's get to the root of things. Again, part 3 today. We've been talking about the Dharma of Ogun, the 5 roots, and the transformation of it that brings them to be the 5 powers.
Mm-hmm.
And if there are people, yet again, who have not heard the very first one or the previous one, sometimes people just listen all over the map. This is sort of a mini-series, if you will. The 5 roots. We've gone through the root of belief, Shingun. We've talked about Yomgun, the root of wakefulness or awareness. Today is what?
Today is jongjin, perseverance. One of my favorite
Jongjin.
topics, actually. I do a lot of this kind of work with students.
Hmm.
I talk about the importance of perseverance
Yeah.
with them.
Perseverance, determination,
Mhm.
zeal, you could name it, many things. But just to rehash the idea, the concept, the general concept, the roots are these things that are innately within us. You're born into this world, you've got them. They manifest in our daily lives automatically. Now, here's what we want to do. We want the automatic to be turned into purposeful, conscious,
Mm-hmm.
directed. And so that's the transformation of the root. The roots, as roots are beneath the surface of the knowing mind, let's call it that. So beneath the surface of the soil. When those things, this root of belief, let's say, sprouts into your daily life, behavior is informed by it. We are all informed by so many things.
Right.
We're informed by the weather, and not sort of, I'm informed about the current events kind of informed.
Mm.
No, we're informed unknowingly. We're informed by our kojong kwanyam, we're informed by our karma, we're informed by our traumas, we're informed by our repressed memories, we're informed by our cup of coffee, we're informed by our ill-digested whatever last meal may be. All of these things are informing us one way or another. Hormonal imbalance due to whatever is informing. So all of these things are informing us. When it comes to nature, the sort of fundamental nature, these ogun, these 5 roots, too inform us in that way. We behave by the silent whisper of them,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't largely know. And so the idea of the 5 roots and then subsequently the 5 powers is, there is this innate thing. How do I harness it? How do I direct it? How do I make something conscious, purposeful out of it? And when you do, that is called the power. So today, like I said, we've talked about the root of belief. We've talked about the root of wakefulness or awareness or mindfulness.
I think that you're describing there a beautiful process that has been the mystery of mankind throughout the ages, right? We've always wondered and explored and discovered. And before we discovered certain things in nature always existed, and whether we knew about it or not, it impacted our daily lives. There are countless things I could describe. I just thought of maybe like electricity for the moment, right? There was lightning, there's electrical currents inside of our body, and certain aspects of the earth has grounding and so forth and so forth. And it wasn't until we discovered now how to harness that we can use it, and then now here we go. Today we have the power of electricity being used with the purpose of, X, Y, and Z, whatever it is, whether you're in a lecture hall in the middle of the night, or you're working in a factory throughout the night, or you're driving your car throughout the night, you're harnessing the power of electricity.
Right.
That always is and always was.
Yeah.
Always functioning, just until we were aware of it.
The roots.
We learned to manage it.
The
root
roots
was
were
there.
Yeah.
Right? But then we turned it into oleok. Now it's literally in your daily life. You can see the power of electricity. If you're listening to this right now, electricity is working, and inside of your brain, the electricity
right.
is working.
Many things, yes.
So, yeah.
The North and South Pole, energetic, we just had it last month or so, the shift, right? They switch polarities in a sense. Those kind of things are, when you look at the cup of coffee and you've poured your hot coffee and you dribble a little bit of creamer into it, and you see the swirl go on, and we say, oh, it's the hot liquid rising to the top, the cold, the mixings, this whole thing is already in existence. Everything is. So
it's
like you said, it's the discovery of what is what happens. It's not new stuff in a sense, in a way of looking at it. It's new because we haven't seen it yet, but all the discoveries are discoveries of, in a sense, things that have that nature is in existence. If it didn't, and if it wasn't, it couldn't be.
Right.
So all that is because it already the
innate potentiality for those
potential
things
is
are
there.
there. The seeds are there. It just next needs the layers to be, I guess, shed, and then the inyan to be made, and then kaboom.
Right. And that's largely
Inyan meaning contact.
Yeah, that's
connection.
largely the premise of the idea that enlightenment is a possibility for everyone. On the account of that very thing, it's innately already the thing we're searching, or the thing we're trying to discover, is innately existing in us. And if it wasn't, no one could. Or if some people had it, those people could. And if other people didn't have it, those people couldn't. Everybody has it. And this is the case with the roots. And so today, jongjin, determination, perseverance, zeal, and the pairing usually is that the perseverance is paired frequently, sort of in a sense, with patience. The ability to endure and persevere through. It's a little bit different if we get into nitty-gritty nuances, but anyway, diligent and perseverance as existing automatically.
Sure.
This is within, when we look at the biology of the natural world, we could see that things persisting, things that at times we would even consider not alive. Everything has a sort of innately existing determination and perseverance. And then, we could get to sort of some, what the motivations are, the sort of propagation of species or whatever, zeal for life, or the motivation themselves as to why persevere and why the determination, why the zeal. That's a whole different can of worms, if you will. And so the why, we are not so much concerned here, what the goal is in a sense, but that this is similar to worry. I sometimes say to someone, "Oh, you're worrying too much," and frequently they say, "Sunim, I don't have anything to worry about really," and they miss the thing that that there must be a thing to worry. That I'm talking specifically about a thing. Your leg, your health, your car, your ear, your roof, your whatever. That's not necessarily what I'm addressing in a person. Worry, period. What the worry is about is really of no consequence. Sometimes, right? Sometimes it's, directly this thing, how to unbind oneself from it. But generally speaking, sometimes it's, you worry too much. Not about the one thing. Because if you have the proclivity towards worrying, then the number of things you're going to worry about is endless, limitless. Because you could worry about, look at a tree, you could worry about every single leaf on that tree. So it's not so much as the target or the why or but just simply the worry itself, right? And so determination, what's that saying?
I think, just think about that, but I think determination and patience can help us endure through times of hardship where worry might want to take over your mental sphere. I just had a patient yesterday tell me about this 3-month lull that she had where she was not employed. And then yesterday she told me she did finally get a job, but she couldn't sleep and she worried so much throughout those 3 months. And I just presented to her the idea.
Now she can't sleep because the upcoming job.
The mind I almost connected to a similar mindset to like the hypochondriac. The hypochondriac could have a pain in the knee. You can excavate the knee, you can carve it out, you can show them every single inch of the knee and then close it back up. And
you could amputate the whole leg.
There's nothing there. And then the next day they'll be like, no, it's my ear.
Yeah.
Now it's my ear. And like you're describing, it's sort of just like the warped mirror. The mirror is warped, and it doesn't matter the object that you put in front of it. Whatever object it looks at, it's going to distort it and warp it.
Necessity is the mother of all inventions. That's what I was thinking about. And so this pursuit, I don't know why necessarily that came up in my mind, but it is that kind of...
It's a driving force.
It's a driving force, and that's the, more survivalist kind of thing. And so the existing determination that we have, everybody has, and the question is what amount of it is known to us and acknowledged. And so this is a useful thing to consider. The roots, these roots are very useful in cases where a seeming or an apparent lack of these things in a person's life is. Like, I can't motivate, I don't have the determination, and the person thinks it's something that must be procured, but we haven't sifted through the old, through in-house, haven't looked in our own existence, in our own day-to-day activities, in our personality traits. I say, oh, that person is, sort of lazy. Speaking of which, for each one of the roots, there is the powers, and for each one of those, then there is a hindrance. Also, we haven't mentioned that, which is going to whet the appetites perhaps a little bit, right? So we have Ogun, Oljok, Ochae, which is the hindrances to that. So I have in me the root of determination. What is the hindrance to transforming it into a power, or was the hindrance of it expressing itself in my life? And in a case of this, it's laziness. But
Yeah.
It's obvious. I mean, this is no one's in the audience just gasped in awe of enlightened thought. Wow, the hindrance to determination is laziness, right?
Well, it is not something, magical, mysterious, but there's so many people that know the word and are actually engaging in laziness, and they can't get out of their rut, whatever situation is. And they still don't have this self-awareness to do anything about it.
Mm.
They just function and operate. I have another patient who is aching and dying inside to get a new job. And so, I asked them, are you on Indeed? What are you doing? And yeah, I'm on Indeed. That's it.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I think to myself, well, why is it that this person, and I see that he's intelligent, he has a good background, good qualifications, but why is nothing coming into his life? And in my head, I'm like, I think he's lazy and he's not self-aware of it. And if you have a conversation with him, he understands, like, oh, you can't be lazy in order to get what it is that you want. So I think the word is one thing, but there are still many people out there that, even though they hear the word, they don't have the ability to turn the eye inward and make that connection and be like, oh, this is where my own actions are falling short. My own behaviors are not complying or matching with the goal that I have in mind for myself. So I think on what you're saying, yes, on the surface, yeah, it's nothing new that was discovered or nothing magical that's going to be life altering. But again, we've always said, when you dig past the word,
you have to think.
When you think and you actually find and you point to what the word is referring to, for me at that moment, that is like the trajectory of your life is altered in that very instant. And that to me is magical. That to me is profound when people get it. My goodness, that is a whole different thing, right? Because that is like the next day you wake up and you're just a completely different person.
Yeah, it's words, right?
Words,
Again,
yeah,
words.
that's all these episodes
Words.
tie into one another. But,
because words are symbolic.
Yeah.
Right? Words are symbols and they're symbolic. And then the question begs asking, I understand the word, but I want to know, or what I need explained, or what I need to think about is its implied meaning. Right? Because let's dissect perhaps a little bit laziness, the idea of it, right? There's a difference here between laziness and capacity. Sure. And so laziness and capacity or incapacity, incapable or unable, are very different things.
Absolutely.
So what we get is, and this is frequently, again, a misunderstood thing. You would never say of a depressed person that they're lazy.
No.
If somebody walked in and maybe they're looking at them and looking, they're and I'm illustrating a very kind of crude imagery here, but the person is just in bed or on a couch and they haven't, their clothes hasn't been changed. They haven't done all these things. But you would never say to them or about them that they are lazy, right? We would say that they're, that they're ill, that they're sick, that they're, depressed, what have you. And it's interesting because then even allotted time of depression. I think with the new DSM, from the last version of DSM to the previous, the acceptable length of mourning, post-mourning sort of depression, right? And the criteria for depression were changed. Where it used to be like, okay, you lost a loved one, right? You kind of, it's normal that there's a mourning period. But if you go over that threshold, now we could start talking about, well, now you're quote unquote depressed. Right. Prior to that, we're just mourning. But they've changed the timeline, and it's not like 2 weeks difference. Yeah. It's like 6 months or something crazy, right? And so it's not, a depressed person is not lazy. There's in a sense, a capacity, They're incapable. They don't have the capacity at the time to motivate themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but then we also, a lot of parents would say that of their, some spouses talk about one another in that way, and their teenage children,
teenagers, I hear it all the time.
kids, all the time.
So many times I see parents impose their idea of what they're capable of doing,
right,
or what they expect, or what they were able to do when they were that age, onto their teenage child, and they have no clue as to what their capacity at that very moment is.
Those comparings are horrible idea.
It just doesn't work.
When I was your age, when you were my age, you weren't living in a post-epidemic,
There was no computers. Let's start with that. There were no computers. Let's just start with that. There's no internet, no computers, no AI.
That's why it's not a fair way to look at it. Oh, when I was your age, or when I was at such a grade, or when I was, that means nothing. It tears away the uniqueness of time and place, and it disregards developmental kind of trajectory, right? Or the rhythm of the development, where kids used to be born, with their eyes closed and no hair, and now they're born with a full-grown beard, eyes open, and a Instagram account. They're born like that. And so
that's the emotional component that gets added into the equation when people are looking at their children or someone that they love and they're judging them. But then when you give them the example of capacity, if you say, let's say, all right, you have your backyard. We want to make a pool, let's say 20 feet by 20 feet. We got to dig a hole, 8 to 10 feet deep. And then you tell them, you take you and your wife, go dig that hole with shovels. How long would it take? And then you say 2 excavators. How long would it take? And they would understand that there's a difference in how quickly that could be done, right? Because the capacity of the shovel and 2 people is different from the capacity of 2 excavators.
Right.
It's very clear to the person. But the thing is, a lot of these obstacles and hindrances in the psyche, we cannot see them. So people have a very difficult time. Well, those with much dust in their eyes cannot see them, right? Those who are trained, those who are trained in the healing arts, those who practice meditation and really try to look into the depths of another person, they can, but...
Yeah, I was talking to someone and they said how they overcame their anger. And they said, Asanima, I wasn't practicing. And what they meant I wasn't doing suheng. And they said that's... you have to consider we are born into this world. It is practice. Every step of the way, every situation we're faced with is for the purpose of some kind of development, growth, etc., etc. If we operate on a karmic, habitual sort of route, then we're again and again and again. There's very little deviation from that. But nonetheless, there is practice. So life itself is practice. That's why we say things like, life is a meditation, or life is, prayer, Kido is life, and all those kind of things.
Right.
And what they meant, what they meant is that I wasn't practicing at the time when I sort of overcame my anger issues. I was just living life, and just happened to something struck me, and well, exactly it. Something struck me, right, that there was a convergence of a state of mind, a situation, etc., etc. This is the same thing. So that moment for that person of transforming their anger, or at least to some degree coming to grips with it, was wafted into the conscious mind via the roots that already existed. So they were doing a thing that I would call practice, but they weren't consciously saying, I'm practicing, being patient, or I'm practicing. It kind of just happened. So, and this is how the transformation of roots into power are, because now that person is a practitioner. So now they could say, I am practicing, because there's a sort of curriculum that they're adhering to that is now makes them do things in a certain way, knowing. So it's informed life. So we have there's kind of just go about your way, and things will happen, or may take 7 lifetimes to happen, what have you. And then we have the same thing, the same life. But if we go about it in an informed way, where we're transforming and utilizing these roots that are going to inform our lives anyway, just not in an organized, directed fashion, we could make more progress in less of a time, potentially. So how do you apply yourself to that? That is diligence. That is the diligence of how you tend to the needs of existence, and so this laziness, as since we've introduced it, this laziness in terms of it being the hindrance to it, is different than capacity, as we talked about. And a teenager, when we just look from the lens of laziness, we're not looking at the totality of the person, the capacity of them, right? We could say that they just simply don't know how to motivate, but that's not even the case. They are very much motivated. They're very much motivated to just other things. Make good impression with their friends, have a, robust social life, get the new sneaker. They're motivated. They're, if you maybe don't give them an allowance and you tell them they have to, trim the hedges with the tweezers, and if they want those shoes, they're going to be very motivated.
And
they might not be
patience.
Motivated to help you bring your groceries in from the car after you've gone shopping, right? But so it's not that there's laziness
across the
there,
board,
right?
And that's what parents kind of do. They just do a blanket statement.
Yeah, period.
And they miss. Right. Well, if he can stay and play on the computer or play a video game for a certain amount of time, that's patience.
Why can't they?
That's endurance.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you want to move them from that, you have to look at the fundamental seed at work there, right? Like they do have the capacity for motivation. They do have the capacity for endurance. They do have the capacity for patience.
Undirected or directed by, and it's a heavy sort of load, because the brain chemistry magic that happens on account of video games and social media. A boring parent is up against an industry of brilliant minds, brilliant in however you want to define the world, but minds that understand habit forming, that understand brain chemistry, the IV drip of your dopamines on the account of a meme or a thing that you like seeing, and the algorithmic calculation of just how to systematically shorten and shorten, or lengthen and lengthen your space between your favorite image and then the next frame image, but they have to cram a lot of advertisement in there. So how systematically, talk about patience, machined patience, because it's a machined way of doing it. But a human being, like a parent, hasn't frequently the patience.
No, they don't have the vision. I had a patient. I used to help him. I worked at a high school, Union High School, and he wouldn't do that good in school. He had no patience, let's say, for school. He would cut class. But I remember that time period, this kid, he had a huge sneaker collection. And I would ask him about it, like, how'd you get those Jordans or the latest drops for Nikes? This guy would wait outside of Foot Locker the night before, like starting at like 10 p.m. and then the store would open like the next day at like 8 o'clock in the morning, sitting in a chair. I was like, dude, you have the patience of a Zen master.
Right.
And so the parents would always complain, but we can't see the transformation. Today, that skill transferred over into real life. And now he's a supervisor at a PAC&G. He's an executive, and it took him about 8 years to get the job of applying, not getting in, applying, not getting in. And he's in there.
Applying, not getting in, applying, not
and
getting
then now
in.
he's in there, right?
Perseverance, sitting outside of the front door of the application office,
waiting.
sort of. Yeah.
You know, and now he's successful.
Yeah.
You know, but at the moment, parents were so worried and scared, and because they couldn't see, they only saw the lack of motivation towards the classes. They couldn't see like the root, the seed that this kid had for patience. It was just misdirected at the time. So he needed a little bit of guidance and learning to essentially channel that towards a goal that's, you know, going to bring him more benefit.
And it is a challenging.
Yeah.
It's
a
a
challenging though.
thing.
It is challenging for parents at that time period.
Because it's the patience necessary, right? Like I said, it's the let's say, if we go back to gaming and things like that, the machined, calculated way in which you sort of they're reeled in, right? It's machined, and parents, they don't have the perseverance that a machine system has. They don't have the perseverance to spark an interest and a spark, right? Like if you starting a fire from a spark, you can't just have logs that you want to set ablaze with a spark. You need, let's say 5 layers, 5 levels of kindling, right? So if you catch a spark, then let's say a cotton ball, something very fluffy and very soft, very rapidly ignitable, right? That
like little shavings I've seen from my grill, like they sell little shavings of wood to catch.
Right, so you first, let's say you have the spark, you catch the spark and like I said, a cotton ball, let's say.
Yeah.
And then from the cotton ball you move to something little bit, very thin, shavings, like you said. So you could use pencil shavings or just scraped off a little bit fuzz, in a sense of now a little bit more dense material, so like wood, and then tiny little you could do grass, and then you got tiny little twigs, and then a little bit thicker sticks.
That's a good example. Yeah.
And then little by little you can
get to the wood,
a trunk of a tree ablaze, right? But parents want trunk now, fire, and the machined algorithmic systemic technique is got all the little things, the plush cotton ball of reward for just the tiniest spark of your interest. You get a reward, right? That's like I call it like the IV drip of dopamine, right? It's like you get the little lick, and then they measure just when the hunger, the addictive hunger starts, and then they give you just as you're drifting off. Websites do that sometimes. You're on a website, and should you move your mouse to the top of the screen, which is to say you're about to navigate away from the website, out comes a pop-up. Hey, you want 20% off? It doesn't just, some of them are just by timing, but some of them are just, they track the movement of the cursor, right? And so if you're moving towards the top of the thing, like, he's heading for the door.
It's like a last minute help.
Yeah, and it's like, hey, how about 20% off? Or how about, whatever.
Just don't get rid of me.
Or, hey, maybe you don't like it now. Sign up for our mailing list, period. So in day-to-day interaction, to mimic or to utilize that kind of a systemic thing, parents want just on account of, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, right? But on account of, I am your parent. And that's why we get the commentary that we get. Why? Because I said so.
Right.
That's rough, right? That's a rough thing, because that worked when the dynamic between child and parent was very different than it is today.
Yeah.
When we had what we called home education, where the family sort of ate at the table, and during the dinner, conversation was had. Meaningful conversation, not what kids now would imagine as interrogation. How was school? What did you do? Did you? Mama, mama. Who wants to be subject to that, right? And so it's a rough kind of thing. The competition is is what's that? The Terminator-esque, right? We're sort of man versus machine in a sense. And so to understand, when we understand the psychology of these kind of things, and we understand, I say psychology, but when we understand how things unfold in life,
Right.
we have to adhere to that. We can't go against the grain. And so you can't imagine if you've sparked a thing of interest for a child. I had someone that I was talking to, and their child seemed very unmotivated and the typical thing. And they went on a trip, a family trip. And when I asked about how was the trip, and said, they said, "Oh, my son really kind of was enlivened by it. The sort of was if woken up out of a torpor, and he was alive, looking up from the phone and doing this and doing that." And so that's why I said, you have to exploit this. And this is not necessarily the kind of negative connotation of the word exploit, but you have to exploit, meaning there is the spark. You have to, when you get a spark and you see a little bit smoldering, you blow on it ever so gently, right? Not with the, "Oh, now go and do it." This is the other thing that frequently happens. Parents see, and this isn't parents, we say parents, but think about your own mind. Never mind even parents, but these are just examples. You see a tiny smolder of interest. And then there is if we continue with this idea of parents, then a parent becomes overjoyed by the fact that, "Oh, I found something that my child now is interesting other than looking at a computer screen," right? And so there's a manic panic want to now, and this is true. We see this again, if we go back to this idea of making a fire. If you too quickly add the next level of kindling, you smolder the thing.
Right.
If there's not enough airflow, the fire won't continue developing. And this is the thing. Parents smolder.
Yeah, they overstep.
Yeah,
They overstep.
and they
suffocate
the oxygen out of the flame. And their intention is good.
It is
right?
a good,
but it's backed by emotional response. Oh, yes, okay, and then maybe you book 1,750 family field trips, and you murder that spark, right? So it's how to add air and space, and how to systematically and progressively add the next level thickness or of kindling. How do you do that? And this is another challenging thing. You have to watch the fire.
Right.
You have to look at the fire, see, it's developing. Okay, now ever so gently add a little bit, this thing. And the interaction with children and parents, time-wise, doesn't really afford that observation to the degree to which a machined, monitored, algorithmic robot brain keeps, and this is, I've learned this in a sense working in school.
Yeah.
A group of kids, your classroom full of kids, one comes up and makes a request. And let's say you say, all right, well maybe next week, right? And you just say, maybe next week. You say, can we do this activity? Okay, maybe next week. Right now we have this particular, thing that we have to complete. Another one comes up and says, can we do it? And says, yeah, another time, right? And maybe you say all these things and you just go about your business. And you come back next day and guess what? Every one of those kids remembers exactly the promises you've made. Right? And now all of a sudden it's like, you said next week, but you told me next week, and you've forgotten 17,000 times, right? And this is true also with children and the adults, this is the same idea of not watching the fire closely enough. You give up ground,
Yeah.
right? Because again, it's not comparing anybody's children to prisoners, okay, to inmates.
No, we're not doing that.
But it's the same dynamic, right? An inmate will befriend the guard, sweet talk the guard, whatever.
Yeah.
And this isn't to say that it's always some rotten motivation, but
I've actually had a
they'll
guard
get
that-
a cigarette after 6 months of mooching up to, or whatever the expression is, up to a guard, right? A correction officer and the thing. Why? Because you've befriended them, and it's like, hey, Frank, can I get a cigarette, man? And they've created a rapport and whatever, and maybe that cigarette goes, right?
But once you give that one cigarette, that's the foot in the door technique.
Right. And that's why that
Now
coldness,
they can get in
Yeah.
and get more.
and that's why sometimes we see that sort of very cold, aloof, what is then considered as rude and obnoxious demeanor. Let's say in this case from the correction officer, but it's because it's a. They say, well, come on, I'm just a human being, but yes, but we're in a certain kind of a system, and and then they're forced to lock down and buckle down, lest you become exploited, and this is the same mechanism that cults, override the intelligence of a person, right? You could have 17 PhDs, and why are you wearing your underwear on your head and standing on one leg on a rooftop because the spaceship is coming? That kind of thing. So it's that same idea. Kids will apply, and the way that the persistence, and this is
It is
the
persistent.
jongjin, right?
Yeah.
The kid, in a sense, will lean against you, and this is again, we're talking about school, but this is true it's the same principle, right? They will lean against you. The way that if your door opens, let's say somebody walks in and they pull the door open to walk in, and on this side of the door you lean a broom against that door. When they pull the door, that broom is going to fall.
Yeah.
Right? In other words, it's going to gain ground. And so this is where determination works. You lean yourself against the thing. And we have in Zen and in Buddhism, Gui Ibul, Gui Song, you lean on the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. You lean on the teachings. You lean on the Sangha. You lean on it, right? And this is a kind of similar thing. So in this case, they lean, and whatever minuscule step back that you take becomes the new frontier. And it's in that progressive, systematic way that the diligence of your child will progressively, systematically, and slowly eat up the ground of mutual respect, right? Or the idea of some kind of authority, right? It's these small incremental things, and then next thing you wake up and you want to get a matching tattoo with your 15-year-old, because you're the best friends kind of thing, and you perhaps not providing that which the parenting job requirement calls you to provide, in a sense. And also, listen, if you want to get a matching tattoo with your 15-year-old, that's your personal business. We're talking about the mechanism of determination and perseverance.
I think, when you lean on Buddha, when you lean on your practices, meditation, it starts to have some of your worries and fantasies of doom start to fizzle away when you can truly lean and just be persistent in the task at hand. And this becomes part of your meditation, right? Because the worry and the pessimistic thinking pulls you away. And then what you are to do is you're to use your perseverance to push away from that and get back to the task at hand and lean on what your method of practice is. For example, it is well known and well documented that breathing can calm your nervous system and get rid of worry, improve your memory, improve your clarity of thought. There's a million things we can go on and on and on. But how often do people really lean into just the breathing practice and just jongjin, sit with the perseverance like a train, chugut, 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 chugut to the destination? That's the goal. That's what we want. Right? The perseverance will keep you there. But so many times people will then, but I did it, but. If it's a question and a valid question, sure. But sometimes that but is that rubber band effect, just pulling you right back into that dark cloud, into that deep hole where you're now drowning once again. So I love that idea of leaning in and just persevering.
I think
and then you land when you fall on your goal,
I believe,
whatever it is you're working towards.
Pop Kugyan Sutra says that the tree that leans to the west falls to the west.
Falls to the west. I love that phrase.
It's that sort of idea, right? And so if you lean on, let's say, Amitabha, you fall towards Amitabha. If you lean on Kwanzaa Bosal, you fall to, so what do we lean on? What do we...
But people say I do it. People say I do it. Then we're going to get into words once again. But if you can...
Well,
and that's what I want to hone in on is, we're not talking about saying you did it.
Kafka has it just brilliantly. Evil is that whichever distracts. Oh, man, and that is just finger-licking goodness.
That is really good, because the mind can conjure up a defense against something where it'll say, like, I couldn't do it, because I had to go to church. I couldn't do it because, I had to fold the laundry. And those are all functional, necessary things in life.
Right.
But the mind is conjuring up something that is supposed to be good.
Distract.
Or pot. We won't use that word, though.
Oh, I will.
That's why that's finger looking good with it.
Evil is that which distracts. Your laundry is evil. Your laundry is evil, if you're supposed to be doing something else.
If you wanted to get your doctorate, if you had to tend to a sick child,
right. It's a timing.
A sick parent.
Yeah, and that's why
at that moment,
how frequently do we prescribe, quote unquote, an organization? How do you schedule your thing? How frequently do we talk about with people of this is what you need to consider is how you're utilizing your time. And I'm not talking about this psycho grind fetish that we're seeing, micromanaging every iota of the thing.
No,
I stand on one leg to strengthen my ankle muscles while I eat a sandwich and answer my emails, and I'm also fanning the cryptocurrency computer at the same time. And so it's just crazy,
right?
But it's and people who've been to our meditation classes know how frequently I talk about this. Don't pencil yourself in, you Sharpie yourself in, right? And when you Sharpie yourself into your calendar, you don't put such a silly thing as meditation. I'm going to do meditation. You put in there, you have a meeting. And when you look at it, somebody says, hey, can we go out to whatever, or do you have time? And you could pull out your phone and says, oh, I can't, I have a meeting. And the chances are they won't ask you with whom. But if they do, you say, I have a meeting with who? With the president of the universe. I have a meeting with a very, very important client. I have a meeting with a very, very important person. I have a meeting with a very important, I can't miss this meeting. This is the attitude with which to approach your schedule of self-care. And we've talked about this also, right? You care for yourself, then self-care for yourself. To be distracted by the organization is the issue frequently. What is
Mm.
urgent? What is important?
Right,
Etc.
right.
Etc. Yeah.
Everything can't reach the same level of importance. You know,
No.
I oftentimes tell people, I give the emergency room example, right?
Right.
Everyone that arrives there, when you're doing triage, you have to weigh and value the immediate urgent necessity. A
Yeah.
fever doesn't get the same amount of attention as a gunshot wound, right?
Right.
It's just a very obvious thing. So you have to organize things in a similar fashion.
Yeah.
Or I sometimes tell people, we can take all the furniture out of this room in an organized fashion and in order, but if we take them all out at the same time, nothing goes
You're
out.
getting wrong out. Yeah.
Nothing goes out. And people's life goes into a
Constipation.
stall. Constipation, traffic jam.
Yeah.
Yes. So heed the warnings.
Yes. So, cheers to the transformative power of
Mhm.
applied self.
Hmm.
Taking the roots and making the roots into actionable, directed, meaningful, purposeful work, life, existence, whatever you want to call it. But know that you have these, that these are innate within you, and it's also helpful to know that they're innate in others. So if we are to be perhaps
Well, if you're a parent or you're working with another individual who's maybe
Right.
not pulling their weight as much as you, those points of friction in your life,
Mhm.
where it could be an in-law, a loved one,
you take into
someone on the
fact-
road that you're driving next to,
Yeah.
an old lady
You have to
driving,
take that into
whatever it is,
account.
you have to.
that the building blocks of who they are and the building blocks of who I am are in fact the same. These capacities, or I'm sorry, not these capacities, but these potentials are there. And so just to say that they haven't bloomed is true. And then to say, to criticize or what have you is, I've give out this sort of
Mhm.
mantra, under construction, when you look at the other person, under construction. And then there's a second part of it, me too.
Me
Under
too.
construction, that person, under construction, me too. And we could then sort of soften the edges and kind of relax a bit and somehow strive for a communal, collective betterment of one another.
Mhm.
Because we are going to be in whatever expression of being of benefit to one another. Someone might be of benefit by their action to tell you, don't be like me.
That is a good lesson too.
No. So,
All
all right, folks. So this was the third of 5. 2 more to go. And then you have a complete set. Collect them all.
Mm-hmm.
They come with your Happy Meal and they bring
Yeah.
you happiness.
Yeah.
So these are the Happy Meal
Gifts that
Gifts,
you get that
right.
you can just
collect them all.
gotta catch them all.
Until then, take care of yourselves and each other. I'm Jörgen Sonnen.
I'm Dr. Ruben Lambert. If you like what you hear, subscribe and like, and make sure you pass it on to someone else who may benefit from our program.
And if you feel moved to shoot in our direction a little
Yes.
recording, we've had a number of people initially do a little recording that we play to inspire others to either listen or just simply what your experience of being a supporter of the podcast is. You could tell others to support the podcast financially, to support the podcast by telling others to support the podcast. And these are just sort of very practical things in a way. In a cheesier way, if you will, support the podcast by living according to the things that have the potential to transform your lives.
How can they, if they want to leave a voice message of what they think about the podcast,
You
to
could
be
just,
placed? It would be placed in one of our intros, is what we've been doing, right?
Yeah. You could just record it on your phone and then text it to me.
Okay. And
Yeah.
that information's on the.
That information is on the website.
Okay.
I think, if you just want the thing, 908-591-1754.
Okay.
908-591-1754. And you could just shoot a text message with the with your pre-recorded thing, or if you're one of our regulars, I think you could even call and leave a message on our answering machine, and I could think that could be utilized also. Just obviously text me before you're going to call, lest I pick up the phone call and ruin that.
Or say hello
say hello,
and
right.
state your intention, and then you can have them just call back.
So, yeah, that's splendid. We love those. They've been very sweet, and again, they inspire others, and it's sometimes just to have a different voice than my own and yours.
Yes.
It's a nice way to break it up, if you will.
Yep, and any questions too. We've turned all of the questions into podcasts. So
yep, we're waiting for those. So don't be discouraged from sending in the questions.
Every question is a good question.
Yep.
You want to know what came first, the chicken or the egg, whatever it is that's on your mind. Shoot it our way.
Yep. The preservation of species. Let's go look into it. All right. Ta-ta.